In the distant reaches of the galaxy, where stars glimmered like scattered jewels on a black canvas, there were stories that even the bravest spacefarers whispered only in quiet corners. These stories spoke of the Terran, an alien race whose strength and skill in battle were unmatched. Among them, the females were the most feared. Their height alone could tower over any human or alien soldier. Their muscles, strong as the hulls of starships, carried them through feats no one believed possible. Their eyes glowed with a light that seemed to pierce the very soul. The mere mention of their names made entire fleets pause, reconsider, and often retreat. Even on the busiest space stations, in the safest trade hubs, the Terran females were a topic that could silence a room. Captains of renowned vessels spoke of battles lost before they even began because of the sheer presence of a Terran female. Merchants who had seen entire fleets wiped out never dared trade near their territory. Children in distant colonies were told tales of these warriors to warn them of danger in the stars. Yet, as terrifying as they were, curiosity lingered at the edges of these tales, especially for those humans who refused to accept fear as an answer. On the remote outpost of Orval Station, orbiting a quiet blue planet, a rumor had reached the ears of a human named Raylan. Raylan was not a captain nor a soldier. He was a mechanic, responsible for maintaining the station's machinery, engines, and sometimes the small fleet of transport shuttles that passed through the station's docking bays. His life was routine, quiet, and removed from the chaos of interstellar politics or wars. He preferred tools to talk, engines to arguments, and the hum of machines to the roar of battles. Yet the story of a captured Terran female reached him, and something in it stirred a curiosity he could not ignore. The tale was simple yet strange. A Terran female had been captured during a failed raid on a nearby colony. Unlike the stories of destruction that usually followed their name, this one had been brought to Orval Station alive. She was in chains, guarded by a dozen armed personnel. Everyone who approached her felt a chill run down their spine. No one had spoken to her except the guards, and even they looked uneasy. Her presence changed the energy of the station. The corridors felt smaller. The lights seemed dimmer. The hum of machines seemed quieter, as if the entire place held its breath. Raylan, however, did not feel the fear others did. He had grown up listening to stories of heroes and villains in space, but he had learned early that fear often came from misunderstanding. He did not know why, but he felt that this creature, as strong and terrifying as she was, could be understood. Maybe it was because he saw fear everywhere around him in the faces of guards, merchants, and travelers alike. He wanted to see beyond the stories, beyond the reputation that had spread across the galaxy. The first time Raylan saw her, he froze for a moment at the edge of the holding area. The Terran female sat in silence, her arms crossed, her glowing eyes fixed on nothing, yet somehow seeming to look directly at him. She was massive, easily twice the size of a tall human, and her posture radiated confidence and power. Even restrained by chains, she seemed untouchable, like a force of nature momentarily paused. Most people avoided eye contact with her, keeping their distance. They whispered among themselves, speaking of what she could do if provoked, of the legends that surrounded Terran females. One guard had muttered something about not being paid enough to be in the same room with her. Another had nervously joked about how quick she could end their lives if she wanted to. Raylan did not laugh, nor did he step back. He simply watched, trying to see past the fear and into the being she might be beyond the stories. For several days he observed her from afar, careful not to intrude or alarm her. He noticed small things that no one else seemed to see. She tilted her head slightly when a guard clumsily handled her restraints. She flexed her fingers, not in anger, but as if testing the limits of her chains. And once, late at night when the station was quiet, she hummed a low sound, almost like a song, so soft that it could be heard only in the stillness. It was haunting, unfamiliar, but not threatening. It intrigued him. One evening, while the station's corridors were nearly empty, Raylan carried a tray of water and food toward her cell. It was a simple gesture, something the guards did not see the need to do. Most considered her untouchable and dangerous, and they avoided interaction entirely. He approached slowly, placing the tray carefully in front of her. She did not move, nor did she speak. Her eyes, glowing softly in the dim light, watched him with intensity. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then, without warning, she spoke. Her voice was low, powerful, and carried a resonance that seemed to vibrate in the very air. "Why are you here?" she asked. It was not a question of curiosity or friendliness. It was a question of challenge, of testing the boundaries of those who dared approach. Most would have fled, but Raylan only met her gaze steadily. "I want to understand," he replied simply. "Everyone is afraid of you. I want to see why." Her eyes narrowed. She studied him as if he were a puzzle, trying to determine if he was a threat, a fool, or something else entirely. No human had ever spoken to her like this. Fear, obedience, and hatred were the only things she had seen from humans. Yet here was one who came without fear. He did not bow, did not flee, did not wield a weapon. He only observed and spoke honestly. Days turned into a week, and Raylan continued to visit. He did not push or demand. He simply sat near her cell, spoke to her when she wished to speak, and offered help when it was needed. Slowly, small changes began to show. She did not glare as sharply at him. She did not tense her muscles when he entered. And sometimes, when no one else was watching, she would let out a soft hum again, almost like a quiet acknowledgement of his presence. The other residents of Orval Station noticed this, and it caused confusion. How could one human, a simple mechanic, approach the most feared creature in the galaxy and remain unharmed? Rumors began to spread. Some said he was lucky, others said he was foolish. A few even suggested he had some hidden skill that the Terran feared. But the truth was simpler than any legend. Raylan saw a being, not a monster. He saw potential for understanding where others only saw danger. As the days passed, Raylan realized that curiosity was not enough. He wanted to know her story, the reason behind her battles, the reason behind her reputation. He wanted to know why someone so feared could be more than just a weapon of war. The Terran female, whose name he did not yet know, had lived a life of conquest, challenge, and fear. Yet in the quiet moments when no one else was around, she was more than her legends. And Raylan, for the first time in his life, wanted to see the truth beyond fear. By the end of the week, Raylan's presence had begun to change the energy in the station. Guards were still wary and merchants still whispered. But the Terran female's gaze softened, just enough to let a human approach without instant hostility. And in the heart of a galaxy that trembled at her name, a quiet spark of curiosity, understanding, and perhaps friendship began to form. The quiet hum of Orval Station had begun to change. Where once the corridors felt tense with fear, there was now a subtle energy, like the calm before a storm. Raylan's presence near the Terran female's cell had become a small but noticeable part of daily life. Guards still kept a distance, and traders still whispered in hushed tones, but a small, invisible shift had occurred. The most feared creature in the galaxy was beginning to notice a single human in a way no one else had. Raylan carried his tools along the corridor that led to her cell. He often checked the mechanical locks on her restraints, ensuring they were secure yet not overly restrictive. He had no desire to imprison her unnecessarily, but he understood the station's fear. Every few steps he glanced at the guards stationed nearby. Most looked uneasy. Their hands hovered near their weapons, ready for any sudden movement. They did not know why Raylan went near her. They did not understand the calm confidence that kept him moving forward. When he arrived at her cell, the Terran female was sitting with her back against the metal wall. Her glowing eyes fixed on him as he approached. For a moment there was silence. Neither spoke. The sounds of the station faded, leaving only the quiet rhythm of their breaths and the faint hum of distant engines. "You come again," she said, her voice low, smooth, and edged with power. "No one else dares." Raylan set down the small tray of water and a few items of food he had prepared. "I do not come out of fear," he said. "I come because I want to understand. You are not just a story. You are real. I want to know who you are." She studied him, tilting her head slightly. Her eyes glowed brighter for a moment, testing him. "Humans are weak. You should fear me." "I do not believe in fear," he replied simply. "I believe in learning. I believe in seeing the truth beyond stories." Her lips pressed into a line, and she did not answer. She had faced countless enemies, commanded troops, and survived battles that had destroyed entire colonies. Yet here was a human who approached her without armor, without weapons, without a fleet at his command. She felt curiosity stir inside her, a sensation unfamiliar and unsettling. Most beings obeyed fear. Most beings fled from her. But this human did neither. Over the next several days, Raylan continued his visits. He did not rush. He did not demand. He simply spoke when she seemed willing to listen, and he worked silently when she ignored him. He cleaned parts of her holding area, repaired small malfunctions in the energy locks, and made minor adjustments to the station systems nearby. Each action was careful, deliberate, and thoughtful. It was not a display of strength, but of presence. The Terran female began to observe him more closely. She noticed the small details, the way he handled each tool, the way he moved without tension, the way he spoke with a quiet confidence. She did not understand it. No human had ever moved with such calm certainty near her. Most were trembling, cowering, or attempting to deceive her. This human was neither afraid nor submissive. He simply was. One evening, after the station's activity had slowed, Raylan spoke as he sat near the edge of her cell. "You have fought many battles," he said softly. "I see it in your eyes. I see it in your scars. You have survived because you are strong. But I wonder, do you ever wish for something else?" The question caught her off guard. She had spent countless years focused on survival, strategy, and conquest. She had never considered the idea of desire beyond power or victory. For a moment she remained silent. Her glowing eyes reflected the dim lights of the station as she considered him. "Desire?" she asked, her voice low and curious. "Humans have such simple dreams." "We have no time for dreams. We live by strength." "Strength is important," Raylan agreed, "but it is not everything. There is more to life than survival. There is more to being alive than winning battles. You may be the strongest being I have ever seen, but you are still you." The word resonated with her in a way that no command, threat, or battle ever had. "You speak strangely for a human," she said. "Most fear me. Most would flee or strike first." "I do not fear what I do not understand," Raylan said. "And I do not wish to strike unless necessary. I only wish to learn." A small sound escaped her, a low hum, almost a whisper. It was not anger. It was not challenge. It was curiosity. She had not felt such a sound in decades. The Terran females of her kind were feared, respected, and obeyed, but few ever inspired anything besides fear or hatred. This human had sparked something different. Days passed, and their silent exchanges grew into brief conversations. She did not reveal her full story, nor did she share her true name. She tested him constantly, observing his reactions, waiting for any sign of weakness. Yet Raylan remained steady. He never raised his voice. He never showed fear. He never faltered. Slowly, the distance between them narrowed, not physically, but in understanding. Raylan began to notice her habits as well. She shifted her weight slightly when she was uncomfortable. She flexed her fingers when she was thinking. Sometimes she hummed softly, a sound that reminded him of the quiet rhythm of nature back on Earth. Small gestures, simple movements, that revealed her as more than a weapon. She was a being with thought, emotion, and awareness. One afternoon, a young technician accidentally dropped a tool near her cell. The clatter echoed loudly, and the Terran female's eyes snapped toward the noise. The technician froze, expecting anger or violence, but she did not attack. Instead, she observed, her glowing eyes narrowing thoughtfully. Raylan stepped forward calmly. "It is all right," he said. "It was an accident. No harm is done." She glanced at him, and for the first time there was a faint hint of acknowledgement in her expression. She had expected fear, submission, or challenge. Instead, she saw calm, clarity, and confidence. She did not understand it yet, but it intrigued her. The other residents of Orval Station began to notice the change. Guards were less tense when Raylan approached. Some of the technicians whispered among themselves. Some doubted his wisdom. Others quietly began to admire the courage it took to face the most feared creature in the galaxy, without weapons or threats. Raylan's approach did not weaken the Terran female. Instead, it revealed a side of her that no one else had ever seen. As the week drew to a close, Raylan sat near the edge of her cell once more. "I do not know why you fight," he said softly. "I do not know why you came to where you are. But I want to understand. I want to know the story that no one else has heard." She looked at him silently, her glowing eyes reflecting the soft lights of the station. She could have dismissed him easily. She could have lashed out, striking before anyone expected it. Yet she did not. Something in his voice, his manner, and his presence made her pause. She did not fully understand it. Perhaps she never would. But for the first time in a long time, she considered another path, one that did not begin with fear or violence. And so, in the quiet corridors of Orval Station, near the edge of a galaxy that trembled at her name, a connection began to form. It was not friendship, not yet. It was not trust, not yet. It was curiosity, understanding, and a faint spark of possibility, and for a being who had always lived by fear and strength, it was enough to make her pause, think, and wonder what it meant to face someone without fear in their eyes. The quiet of Orval Station did not last. Despite its remote location, news traveled fast in the galaxy. Ships passed through its orbit carrying messages, supplies, and travelers who spoke of strange sightings. Among these messages came the report that a fleet of Terran warriors was approaching the sector. Not just any warriors, but a hunting party seeking to reclaim one of their own, the female who had been captured. The station's alarms rang, and red lights flickered along the corridors. Guards scrambled to stations, readying weapons and activating energy shields. Merchants and technicians ducked under tables or ran for secure areas. Fear gripped the station like a heavy blanket, yet amidst the chaos, Raylan moved calmly. He had anticipated that danger might come, but he also trusted in preparation, understanding, and the Terran female's abilities. He approached her cell with measured steps. She was standing, chains clinking softly as she shifted her weight. Her glowing eyes met his, and he could see something different in them. There was no hesitation, no fear. Instead, there was a spark of challenge. She had sensed the approaching fleet before anyone else had. Her instincts were sharp, honed from countless battles, and they told her that the moment for observation was ending. "They are coming," she said, her voice steady. "They will not ask. They will destroy if they must." "I know," Raylan said calmly, "but we can prepare. We can face them together." She tilted her head slightly, studying him. "Together? You, a human, and I, a Terran female. Do you believe that is possible?" "I believe that we can try," he replied. "I trust you. Will you trust me?" For a moment she did not answer. Then she nodded slowly, almost imperceptibly. It was not agreement, not yet. It was acknowledgement. Raylan moved quickly but not hurriedly. He instructed the station's technicians to fortify the main corridors and shields. He reviewed energy weapons, rerouted power to defensive turrets, and checked the status of every emergency system. His mind worked with precision, balancing fear and logic. The station had never faced such a threat before. Yet he treated the situation with calm determination that inspired confidence in those around him. Meanwhile, the Terran female was released from her chains under strict supervision. The guards expected her to resist, to lash out, to challenge them immediately. Instead, she moved with purpose. She tested the mechanisms, flexed her strength in small, careful ways, and adjusted her stance. Her presence alone altered the energy of the station. Where once fear had dominated, now there was tension mixed with a strange kind of hope. She was the most dangerous being on the station, yet she seemed to prepare not for destruction but for controlled defense. Raylan and she moved through the station together, silent but coordinated. He pointed to sections that needed reinforcement. She nodded, her massive hands capable of lifting structural supports that two humans could barely manage. Together they created barricades, reinforced walls, and prepared the energy systems. The station had never seen teamwork like this. Most humans had no idea how to coordinate with a Terran female. Most Terran females had never worked with humans without domination or fear. Yet here they were, moving as one, building something greater than what either could achieve alone. As the first ships of the Terran fleet appeared on the station's sensors, the station trembled slightly from the gravitational pull of the vessels. They were fast, sleek, and deadly, designed for war and destruction. The fleet's arrival confirmed that the captured female was indeed the target. Their leader, a massive Terran warrior known across the galaxy, had orders to bring her back at any cost. Orval Station would be the obstacle in his path, and he would not hesitate to destroy it if necessary. Raylan and the Terran female watched the fleet together from a reinforced observation deck. Her glowing eyes scanned each ship, reading patterns and calculating potential attacks. "They are strong," she said softly, her voice a mixture of respect and warning. "But they do not understand the station." "They do not understand you." Raylan nodded. "Then we must make them understand. They will not leave without learning that humans can fight back and survive." When the first wave of Terran boarding vessels launched, the station's defense systems engaged immediately. Energy beams lit up the dark space outside, and explosions rocked the station as attackers tried to breach its hull. The guards fired cautiously, aiming for control rather than destruction. Panic spread among the crew, but Raylan remained a calm center. He directed the station's turrets, repaired failing shields, and coordinated with the Terran female. She moved through the corridors like a storm made flesh. Each step shook the floor slightly, and each movement was precise and deadly. Boarding Terran warriors who tried to fight her were thrown aside with skill and control. She did not kill recklessly, but she incapacitated each attacker with exacting efficiency. Raylan followed behind, helping where his skills were useful, setting traps, guiding injured personnel, and reinforcing critical systems. The first boarding wave faltered. The Terran warriors were unprepared for coordination between a human and one of their most feared females. They had expected chaos, fear, and panic. Instead, they found precision, strategy, and resilience. It was not raw power that defeated them. It was the combination of intelligence, courage, and adaptability. The second wave came, larger and more aggressive. The Terran female moved swiftly, her eyes glowing brightly as she read the attacks before they fully formed. She blocked corridors, lifted heavy machinery to create barriers, and used her strength to guide attackers into controlled traps set by Raylan. The human's ingenuity complemented her power, and together they created a dynamic neither side had anticipated. As the battle raged through the station, Raylan and the Terran female shared quick exchanges. Words were few, but commands and observations passed silently between them. He pointed, she reacted. She signaled, he adjusted. Together they were not just fighting. They were creating a plan in real time. The station's residents, previously paralyzed by fear, began to rally. Inspired by the cooperation between human and Terran female, they joined in wherever they could. Engineers repaired turrets, technicians rerouted power, and guards defended critical points. The fear that had once dominated Orval Station was replaced by determination and strategy. Finally, after hours of tense struggle, the Terran boarding forces retreated. The fleet outside remained, scanning and waiting, but the first attempt to breach the station had failed. Raylan and the Terran female stood at the observation deck, catching their breath, watching the attackers regroup. "You fought well," Raylan said, his voice calm but filled with respect. "They will return and they will be stronger." She looked at him, and for the first time her expression was unreadable. "You are different." Most humans would have panicked or fled. Most would have been destroyed. "I do not panic," he replied. "I face what comes and I adapt." "We adapt." Her eyes softened slightly. "Perhaps humans are not as weak as I believed." "Not weak," Raylan said. "Strong in ways you might not understand yet. We survive not by raw power, but by thinking, learning, and working together." The Terran female considered his words. She had spent her life relying on strength, on fear, on domination. Yet here was a human who faced her not with fear, but with courage, understanding, and strategy. She did not yet trust fully, but a seed had been planted. The galaxy had feared her and her kind for centuries. Yet it had never seen what happened when a human refused to be intimidated and worked alongside a Terran female, rather than against her. As night fell over the quiet planet below the station, Raylan and the Terran female prepared for what they knew would come next. The fleet outside would return, stronger and more determined. The battle was far from over. But for the first time, the most feared female in the galaxy had a choice: fight alone, or fight with a human who had dared to approach, understand, and stand beside her. And in that choice, a new possibility emerged. One that could change the way the galaxy saw humans, Terran females, and the power of courage, trust, and cooperation. The warning lights on Orval Station continued to flash as the Terran fleet regrouped in orbit. The calm of the previous night had vanished, replaced by the growing tension of impending conflict. Every resident of the station prepared for the next wave of attack, and fear hung thick in the air. Even seasoned guards felt the weight of what was coming. But in the middle of it all, Raylan moved with his usual quiet determination. He found the Terran female in her temporary holding area, pacing slowly, her glowing eyes scanning the station's status monitors. The chains had been removed temporarily for her to move freely, though guards remained nearby, wary of any sudden action. She had fought off the first boarding wave with unmatched skill, but she knew the next encounter would be different. Her kin would not make the same mistakes twice. "They are coming back," she said, her voice low, almost a growl. "Stronger, faster, more prepared." Raylan nodded, studying the station schematics displayed on a holographic panel. I know, but we have advantages too. You know the corridors. I know the systems. We can prepare and we can fight smarter. She stopped pacing and looked at him, her expression unreadable. Humans, you believe you can stand against my kind? I believe in preparation, teamwork, and understanding, he replied. Strength is not only in size or power. It is in how you use it. That is how we will survive. For a long moment she considered his words. She had faced humans before and most were weak, timid, and frightened. They had no understanding of strategy beyond immediate survival. Yet here was one who thought ahead, who remained calm under pressure and who sought partnership instead of domination. The thought unsettled her but also intrigued her. Raylan moved to the central command console and began activating additional defense protocols. Turrets were redirected to cover critical choke points, and energy shields were strengthened around the station's most vulnerable areas. He worked quickly but carefully, ensuring every system was optimized for the upcoming attack. The Terran female observed silently, noting his efficiency and focus. She had never seen a human handle such complex systems with such skill under pressure. You are remarkable, she said quietly. Raylan looked up, surprised. I am just doing what I can. You are more than that, she replied. You are not afraid. You do not run. You do not submit. You face danger directly and think beyond it. Few of my kind have ever done that. He shrugged, smiling faintly. I do not fight with fear. I fight with reason, with observation, with understanding. Her glowing eyes softened slightly. For the first time, she considered the possibility that humans could be more than fragile creatures, more than prey for stronger beings. She saw potential, adaptability, and courage, qualities that even her strongest kin sometimes lacked. And in that realization, a new feeling began to grow. Perhaps humans were worth more than she had believed. The first alert of the approaching fleet sounded, and the station trembled slightly as the massive ships drew near. Boarding pods detached and hurtled toward the station at high speed. Raylan and the Terran female moved to key defensive positions, coordinating with guards and technicians. The tension in the air was almost unbearable. Every moment counted and every action could mean life or death. The first group of boarding pods hit the outer shields. Explosions lit up the dark corridors as the shields absorbed the impact. Guards fired from turrets and technicians worked frantically to repair damaged systems. The Terran female moved like a force of nature through the station, blocking corridors, intercepting intruders, and using her strength to control the flow of the battle. Raylan stayed close, guiding her, setting traps and ensuring the station's systems functioned at maximum efficiency. Each wave of attackers was stronger than the last. The Terran warriors were skilled, disciplined, and relentless. They had learned from previous encounters and adapted their tactics. Yet Raylan and the Terran female adapted as well. Where the attackers expected chaos, they found strategy. Where they expected fear, they found determination. And where they expected submission, they found unity. At one point, a group of Terran warriors cornered a section of the station where civilians were trapped. The Terran female acted without hesitation, lifting heavy doors to block the attackers' path and creating a safe corridor for the civilians to escape. Raylan guided the civilians through, calming their fears and ensuring they reached secure areas. Together, human and Terran female became a symbol of hope for those who had once thought they would die in fear. After hours of intense battle, a temporary lull occurred. The attackers regrouped, retreating to repair their ships and reassess their strategy. Raylan and the Terran female took a moment to catch their breath. The station had survived the first major assault, but the next wave would be even more dangerous. They will not stop, she said, her voice calm but firm. They will return, and they will come with everything they have. I know, Raylan replied, but we will be ready. We have strength, strategy, and each other. That is enough to face them. She studied him, her glowing eyes reflecting a mixture of respect, curiosity, and something she could not yet name. Humans, perhaps you are not as weak as I believed. Perhaps you are stronger in ways we do not understand. Strength is not only in power, Raylan said. It is in courage, in thinking, and in working together. That is what makes us human. The Terran female considered his words. She had spent her life relying on strength alone. She had trusted fear and power to guide her through countless battles. Yet here was a human who faced her kind without fear, who thought beyond immediate danger, and who inspired cooperation instead of conflict. The thought unsettled her. Yet it also offered something new: choice. She realized that she could follow her kin back into violence, return to the path of domination and fear, and leave the humans to suffer. Or she could stand with the human who had approached her, trusted her, and understood her. It was a choice she had never considered before, a choice that could change not only her life, but the future of those around her. The alarms rang again, signaling the next wave of attackers. The Terran female turned to Raylan, her expression resolute. "Then we fight together," she said. Raylan nodded, a small smile on his face. Together. They moved to their positions side by side, ready to face whatever came next. The station trembled with the approach of the Terran fleet, but in that moment fear did not dominate the corridor. Courage, strategy, and trust took its place. And in that choice a bond had been forged, one that would define the outcome of the battle and change the way both species saw one another. As the first pods of the next wave approached, the Terran female glanced at Raylan once more. "This is only the beginning," she said quietly. "I know," he replied, "but we are ready." And for the first time in decades, the most feared female in the galaxy faced her kin not with fear, but with purpose. Not as a weapon of war, but as a partner in battle. And with a human beside her, the galaxy began to see a new kind of strength emerge. The tension on Orville Station had reached its peak. Every corridor, every room, every control console was prepared for the final confrontation. The Terran fleet, having repaired their ships, returned with greater numbers and more advanced strategies. They did not approach quietly. Their vessels glowed in the darkness of space like stars turned to fire, and the soundless hum of their engines was a warning to all who watched. Raylan stood in the command center, his eyes scanning the display panels, watching the fleet approach. Behind him, the Terran female moved with her usual precision, adjusting defenses, communicating silently with him through quick gestures and glances. The bond between them had grown over the past days. Trust, respect, and understanding had replaced the fear that had dominated their first encounter. Together they were not only preparing to defend the station, but to change how humans and Terran females could relate in the galaxy. "They will not wait," she said quietly, her glowing eyes scanning the approaching ships. "They expect obedience. They expect fear. They will be surprised." Raylan nodded. "Good, let them be surprised. We are ready." The first boarding pods detached and sped toward the station. Energy shields flared, and the corridors trembled as the station absorbed the initial impact. Guards fired from turrets. Technicians worked frantically to maintain power, and civilians ducked behind reinforced walls. In the midst of the chaos, the Terran female moved with unmatched skill, intercepting intruders before they could reach critical areas. She did not strike recklessly, but incapacitated attackers with precise, controlled movements. Raylan moved alongside her, setting traps and guiding personnel to safety. The coordination between them had become seamless. He no longer gave explicit instructions. A glance, a gesture, a shared understanding was enough. Together they were a force that combined human ingenuity with the power of the Terran female, and it astonished those who witnessed it. The Terran fleet began boarding in greater numbers. This wave was more organized, more dangerous, and determined to reclaim their kin. The corridors became a battlefield, lit with flashes of energy as intruders clashed with defenders. Raylan and the Terran female moved through the chaos like a single entity. She lifted fallen debris to block attackers, threw intruders into energy barriers, and guided civilians to secure areas. Raylan repaired critical systems, rerouted power to malfunctioning turrets, and coordinated defensive measures with engineers. Hours passed, and the battle raged on. The station was battered, yet it held. The Terran female paused briefly, breathing heavily, her glowing eyes scanning the intruders. "They are strong," she said, her voice calm but filled with respect. "They expected weakness. They expected surrender. They are wrong," Raylan smiled faintly. "We are stronger together. That is something they cannot understand." Despite the intensity of the battle, their presence inspired the others. Guards fought with renewed courage. Engineers worked tirelessly, and civilians assisted where they could. The station, once dominated by fear, had become a fortress of determination. Every Terran warrior who boarded found not panic but organized resistance, not submission but calculated strategy. Then, the leader of the Terran fleet appeared on the main monitor. A massive figure, taller and stronger than any of the others, glared at the station. His eyes glowed with authority and power. "Return her." His voice resonated through the station's communication system, deep and commanding. "She is ours. Do not resist." The Terran female stepped forward, her gaze fixed on him. "She belongs where she chooses," Raylan replied firmly, standing beside her. The leader's eyes narrowed. "Humans are weak. You cannot stop me." Raylan shook his head. "You do not understand humans. We are not weak. We survive through courage, through thinking, through working together. Today we stand not as prey, but as equals." The leader snarled and ordered the final boarding wave. Pods detached, and the corridors became a storm of light, sound, and motion. The Terran female moved first, striking with precision and power. Raylan followed, guiding personnel and reinforcing defenses. Each intruder who thought to overpower them was met with a combination of strength and strategy. The battle reached the heart of the station. The Terran leader entered, a massive presence that seemed impossible to face. But the Terran female and Raylan stood their ground. He swung his massive arms, striking with force meant to destroy. She countered with unmatched speed and strength, redirecting his attacks while protecting Raylan and the station systems. Raylan moved quickly, adjusting energy shields and guiding power to weak points, keeping them both protected. The fight was intense, testing their coordination and skill, yet they adapted. Where he struck with force, she responded with speed. Where she needed support, he provided it. The leader of the fleet realized he was not facing fear or panic, but a calculated resistance that combined two beings working as one. For the first time, he hesitated. Raylan took the moment to act. He activated a series of energy traps he had prepared throughout the station. Lights flared, energy beams locked into corridors, and the intruders were funneled into controlled zones. The Terran female used her strength to block escape routes, guiding them into the traps without harming them unnecessarily. The leader roared in frustration, realizing that his tactics were failing. Finally, after hours of relentless effort, the remaining intruders retreated. The Terran fleet, seeing their failure, withdrew to orbit. Orval Station had survived. It was battered, scarred, and exhausted, yet it stood, and in its halls the bond between human and Terran female had grown unbreakable. Raylan and the Terran female stood in the observation deck, looking out at the departing fleet. Silence filled the room, not heavy with fear but light with relief. The station had survived against overwhelming odds, and it had done so through courage, intelligence, and unity. "You fought well," Raylan said softly. "And you," she replied. "Without your guidance and understanding, we would have failed. You are remarkable for a human." Raylan smiled faintly. "We are stronger together. That is what matters." She nodded, the glow in her eyes softening. "Perhaps humans are not as weak as I believed. Perhaps we have underestimated them." "Not weak," he said. "Strong in ways you may not understand. That is what makes us survive and why we can stand together." The Terran female considered his words carefully. She had spent her life relying on strength, fear, and domination. Yet here was a human who had faced her kin, organized a defense, and fought alongside her without fear. He had not bowed, fled, or faltered. He had met her as an equal, trusted her, and inspired hope in those around him. In that moment, she made a choice. She would not return to her fleet immediately. She would not resume the path of domination and fear. Instead, she would stand beside the human who had dared to approach her, who had trusted her, and who had shown that strength was more than power. It was courage, intelligence, and unity. Together, they sent a message across the galaxy. Not a warning of fear, but a message of hope. Raylan activated the station's communications array, and with her beside him, they transmitted a signal that humanity could survive, that humans could face impossible odds, and that cooperation between species could achieve what fear and power alone never could. The message spread to distant colonies, through star systems that had never known unity between humans and Terran females. It inspired courage, hope, and determination. Where once there had been fear, now there was a sense of possibility. As the station settled and the survivors began to repair damage, Raylan and the Terran female stood together, looking out at the stars. The galaxy was vast, full of challenges and dangers, but also full of potential, and they had proven that courage, understanding, and unity could turn even the most feared adversaries into allies, and the most desperate situations into victories. The Terran female, once feared across the galaxy, now looked not with anger or disdain, but with curiosity and respect toward humans. And the humans, who had once been considered weak, had shown that their greatest strength was in courage, intelligence, and the ability to stand together against impossible odds. In the quiet aftermath of the battle, Orville Station was no longer just a place of refuge. It was a symbol that humans could endure, that cooperation could triumph, and that even the most feared beings could choose a new path. And for Raylan and the Terran female, it was the beginning of a partnership that could change the galaxy forever.